If you look at the list of G. Paul Moore lecturers over the years, you will see that they highlight the leaders and innovators in our field. Until today, all of them have been physicians, scientists, performers who have been involved intimately with the Voice Foundation. Today's honoree with the G. Paul Moore Lectureship is an international superstar whom we were delighted to involve, also in the hope that she too will be involved with the Voice Foundation going forward. Renée Fleming is a leading advocate for the study of the powerful connections between the arts and health. She is a great innovator, not just as one of the greatest sopranos of all time, but because of these efforts for which we invited her today. Renée launched the first ongoing collaboration between the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the National Institutes of Health with the participation of the National Endowment for the Arts. The Sound Health Initiative explored and amplified research and practice at the intersection of music, health, and neuroscience. In the wake of the collaboration, the NIH awarded $20 million in funding for music and neuroscience research over 5 years. With the NeuroArts Blueprint at Johns Hopkins University and the Aspen Instiute, René's foundation established the Renée Fleming NeuroArts Investigator Awards for early career scientists paired with creative artists. These awards fund basic and applied research projects in the emerging field of neuroarts, the study of how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change the body, brain, and behavior, and how this knowledge can lead to specific practices that advance health and well-being. The Renée Fleming Foundation also partnered with the Foundation for the NIH to develop a toolkit for standardizing music and health clinical research for brain disorders of aging. Research America recognized Renée with the Rosenfeld Award for Impact on Public Opinion, and she received Harvard Medical School's David Mahoney Neuroscience Prize. She is passionate about the central importance of music and the arts in our societies. Most of us have, at times, felt moved or comforted by music, but scientists are now discovering that music can teach us a lot about the brain itself. Music engages many neuronal regions at once, and evidence suggests that it can shape and even alter our brains. Inspired by the Sound Health Initiative, Renée has created a presentation called Music and the Mind. Designed for a general audience, Music and the Mind explores the power of music as it relates to health and to the brain. Topics have included childhood development, cognitive neuroscience, evolution, music therapy, and the impact on healthcare, the impact of music education, music and social cohesion, and the future of music medicine. It is a great pleasure to introduce this year's G. Paul Moore Lecturer, the incomparable Renée Fleming. Well, first of all, as a father of twins, I loved your closing video. And second, thank you for showing Angelique Kidjo. She is a former Vera Award winner, the same award you got last night. And the jewelry out in the lobby was made by Rebecca Carr, a good friend. I knew her forever. She, like Linda Carroll, she was a secretary in my front office. And both also were soloists in the Jefferson Choir. But Becky ended up making this wonderful jewelry, and Angelique fell in love with it and performs with it routinely. And sadly, a couple of months ago in her 60s, Becky got pancreatic cancer and within a matter of weeks was gone. So what you're seeing out there is the last of her jewelry, and if you want to look like Angelique Kidjo, get some jewelry. So we're now going to just chat a little and maybe ask each other some questions and take lots of questions from you all. You have some concert projects going at the moment and are touring, I think one with a film by National Geographic and one about Georgia O'Keeffe. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Well, I've discovered that at a certain point, because I concertize so much, I really wanted to kind of use media to tell stories and also use media to kind of enlighten people. People like to learn. There's this whole real kind of movement towards, especially for all of us who are having more free time in our hands. So the Georgia O'Keeffe piece are letters that she and her husband exchanged during his lifetime. And this is beautifully, really wonderfully put together initiative. And Kevin Putz, who also composed the hours, wrote the music for this. So Rod Galfrey and I have been singing this everywhere. We've done probably between 15 and 20 orchestras that have taken the piece. And then the other thing I'm touring all the time is a climate project. So I won a Grammy in 23 for Voice of Nature, the Anthropocene. And I said, wow, we got the Grammy, let's take it on the road. But again, I want film to tell the story of why we should love the planet. And so National Geographic created these videos for us to tour. And it's really, I put together live music. It can only be performed live with piano or orchestra. And then I added things that I've recorded but never performed, like the soundtrack from Lord of the Rings and a Bjork song, and amongst all the other classical selections. So it's been really 30 minutes of absolute beauty, and some of the Anthropocene as well, which is our human effect on the planet, which is increasingly dire. In a lot of places where I do this, people come up and say, wow, you're so brave. And I think, are you kidding me? What is brave about talking about climate change that worldwide scientists have supported as a true and legitimate problem? So anyway, that's where we are now. But I love touring. I'm just so grateful to still be singing, thanks to the fabulous technical foundation I received when I was a Juilliard student. Can I tell you the Wilbur Gould story? I love this story. So Dr. Gould was my doctor when I was at Juilliard, and for maybe a year after that, before he retired. And I went in one day and I just said, I just can't sing. It's kind of, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm a little bit hoarse. And so he was asking me questions, and I'm sure there was a scope, and then he came over and he put his hands on my shoulders and he said, wow, you are so tense. And I told him what was happening. I had all this family coming in for the performance, and he said, you just have to learn to say no. And that was the first kind of moment that I had to understand what stress does to the body and voice. And I'd never heard of it before. Nobody ever mentioned the possibility to me. So I've been grateful to him ever since. And I also thought at that time it was really uncharacteristic for a medical doctor to think about your life and incorporate that into his thinking about what was wrong.
Well, thanks to the Voice Foundation, that's not true anymore, but it certainly was.
That's right, yes.
It certainly was. Is that part of what got you interested in the intersection of the arts and health, or is that a different story?
No, so it is. In a way, it is, because when my career really took me to the place where I was most in demand, and, conductors were calling me, people were just really grabbing to try and get time and a yes, and it was incredibly stressful. And so I had a terrible bout of stage fright at one point in 1999. I also had somatic pain. So I had a lot of pain as a kind of a precursor to performance pressure. And so I started reading about the mind-body connection, which also was not particularly supported in medicine at that time. And John Sarno helped at one point. I read his book, and then I met him. So, and if once your body realizes it can distract you from things, that it sees as dangerous to you, it'll continue to find ways of doing that. But still, at least I understand it now and can stop it. And then I noticed in the news that neuroscientists were studying music. And I met Dr. Francis Collins at a dinner party, and I said, why is that? Don't they have better things to do, like cure cancer, And he said, it's the Brain Initiative. It is in every known area of the brain, and it's incredibly complex engaging with music because of all the senses that it requires, and especially if you're playing an instrument, and the translation of what's on the page to the ear, the rhythm, and also your body to kind of produce on the instrument. So we started this initiative when I began at the Kennedy Center. I said, let's provide this science to the public. I think they'll enjoy it. And we've had 10 fantastic years doing it, and it's pretty much gone now.
And of course, what you're doing is exactly what the Voice Foundation did.
Yes.
Different subject,
yes,
but an overlapping subject.
Totally overlapping.
But exactly the same model and strategy.
Right. I'm an advocate. I'm not a scientist. I'm an advocate, and I love sharing the word about what science does. And I'm so fascinated, and I understand much better now why there are so many of you who are actually working with voice, but in healthcare. And that is such a fabulous thing. And I think, frankly, there's room in healthcare for more like us because we're treating the whole person. We're even treating the family in a way because there's so much need, emotion, and to acknowledge that emotions are also a huge part of what affects our health. So it's been a really wonderful journey, and I'll continue to try and advocate as I perform.
Well, we're here to help. Some of the people in the audience who are not in the music world may not realize the extent of the pressures that even superstars like Renee get put under. I usually can't name patients, but this one talked about part of this story in public when he received a Vera Award. But I initially took care of Simon Estes for his vocal fold hemorrhage when he was in his absolute prime. By the way, he's doing great. He was in Philly and I had dinner with him a month ago.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear it.
He also has a fabulous spirit. A couple years ago, he was in town. I found out he was going to be by himself in a hotel room. And I said, gee, it's a Jefferson Choir rehearsal night. We're doing Messiah. Why don't you come sing? And he showed up and sang a rehearsal.
Oh, my.
And he did his best to sing softly, but it was like 50% choir. There was kind of this rumble coming in quadraphonic sound. However, when I first took care of Simon, he was a Met superstar at the time. He had sung 9 Parsifals in 11 days in 4 countries. So artists have agents, and agents do not understand the concept of no. And sometimes even artists whom you would think are, and this is true in the rock world too, who you would think are so preeminent that they would have some control over their careers, don't. And Jim Gould's comment about learning how to say no is a really relevant, practical, and important comment. One I personally have not learned, but...
Well, for me in my career, I learned how to say no to the wrong repertoire. So I was really good at that because it didn't feel comfortable to me to sing something that was beyond my vocal heft or range or whatever, and orchestration was too big, etc. But I was not great at saying no to working hard all the time. So that still gets me in trouble sometimes.
When I published the first paper, modern paper teaching doctors how to take care of professional singers in 1981, there was an example in it saying that one of the problems is all the baritones who at one time or another run around trying to sing Vesta la Juba to prove that they're tenors.
Ooh.
And you know, and the people singing repertoire that they shouldn't sing until they're 40 when they're 17.
That still happens, that still happens.
And the only good thing about that is that it makes lots of patience for us.
Right. No, it's always an issue. And somebody said recently to a famous singer in Europe, some manager said, well, we're expecting singers now to have 6-year careers. I said, what? Because I come from a tradition of singing, you know, on your not on your principle, but actually thinking about longevity. And it, you know, the training I got obviously worked, because I'm surprised I'm still performing so much.
And doing great. And we have a board member, George Shirley, sang here not that long ago, and he sounds better than he did when he was younger. When you learn what you're doing, you can do it for a long time.
Yes. Ango sounded great last night. I thought, yes.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. This is not a question we have addressed, but none of the singing teachers in the room is guilty of this. But some of the problem that we have with singers singing inappropriate repertoire and over-singing is generated by singing teachers in institutions where they have juries and competitions, and they want to show off the singers in their studios, often singing things they shouldn't sing. What do we do about that?
Well, you know, listen, given the climate right now for opera performance, classical music performance, which is what I know, I think there are far too many universities and colleges that are taking money from young people who shouldn't be. I mean, I'm sorry. The thing that's, I think, criminal about that is that I mean, somebody recently said to me there should be an antitrust suit because these kids will all have debt. They'll all have terrible debt when they get out of school. I mean, and I've given I don't do it anymore, but I have given master classes at small schools, you know, and obviously there's a miraculous talent at some point, but if they don't get on the right track quickly, when they get to your late 20s, it's really a declining kind of possibility at that point. But, you know, when I hear people that really have no business even majoring in voice, but the schools take them. I asked somebody at a major conservatory, how do you sleep at night? I know that was a bit harsh, but he said, well, you know what he said? He said, you know what, a lot of people use that degree to go on and then major in something else. I'm like, wow, that's, given what secondary education costs, that's a bit rich, you know. So anyway, I don't think it's always the teachers. I think there is some confusion right now about auditions for big houses versus regional houses. Completely different repertoire. And so we invite, you know, singers who are really at a high level to have 2 different lists. So depending on who they're auditioning for. Same with Europe, different repertoire. And I also am now seeing more young singers go into a regional house internship and then graduate, if they're lucky, to a big house internship. So that changes kind of the size expectation or the producing sound. But again, I mean, when I heard Kathleen Battle sing at the Met, I just thought she has to be amplified. She has to be amplified. Her voice is huge in this space. She wasn't. She just sang with incredible resonance, and she knew how to her voice would just launch in that space and create the acoustic. You guys know all the language for what I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean. And I thought, that's it. You know, and the Met in particular favors brighter sounds.
And Delora.
Well, Delora was a force of nature. And frankly, all of her warm-ups, everything that she did was all about buzz and getting that kind of, getting a maximum amount of sound from her voice.
Yeah, we're talking about another Vera Award winner who sang full voice in a small room during a master class and
Yes.
remains unforgettable to everybody who was sitting there. I'm I'm going to bring up the issue of singing teachers because the non-singing teachers in the room probably don't know what it takes to be a singing teacher, and you should. We think, you know, to be a doctor you have to go to medical school and you have to do an internship and a residency. To be a speech language pathologist, you have to get training. In last count that I knew it was 37 states, you needed a license. In order to be a singing teacher, you have to hang out a shingle. That's it. If you suddenly discover that people will pay $100 for a 45-minute session in cash in New York, you just hang up a shingle and pocket the cash. You get a little comfort if somebody happens to be a member of NATS, but we don't really have either any kind of test to assure that NATS members are knowledgeable or competent teachers. So I'm always a lot more comfortable when I find out somebody's in NATS. But last time I checked, there were 25,000 singing teachers in New York City. And that's it. There's no licensure. There's no formal required credentialing. There's nothing. So that there are a lot of, I mean, you talk about the universities and conservatories, and I agree with you 100%. But I think they're a drop in the bucket compared with the non-university affiliated charlatans who are taking money from students and creating voice patients.
Well, we have some in the room who are, you know, incredible, like independent teachers, and they're at the top. But it's true. I think what I've seen a trend, for instance, that pianists are becoming voice teachers at an incredible rate. Pianists who actually are coaches, and you know, some of them really learn, and they have great ears, and they can really help people. So the thing that I think is the secret sauce in being a great teacher is being able to diagnose and prescribe. And there are lots of people who know, you can know all the science, you can be able to talk about it up and down, and voice, all of that, but if you can't hear, because the instrument is so complex, it's in our bodies, it's mostly produced by involuntary muscles, and there are so many other factors, and everyone is different. I say, imagine that, you know, somebody brings their piano to their lesson every week because they have a different piano. Well, they don't. So, but this is why people love voice, because everyone is unique. We sound different. We can love certain favorites. And then it also evolves. It becomes, you know, there are problems that develop from lifestyle, from, you know, it's just remarkable. And then if you're in a smaller school, you have to also know repertoire, you have to know style, you have to really help people perform. I mean, it becomes way more audition technique, way more complex. And then the difference, for instance, between contemporary singing, which I've learned so much about from Rochelle, and classical is tremendous. And until recently, classical singers trained Broadway singers. Well, it's not the same at all. So I'm just thankful to you for upping the whole conversation and the level, because I'm sure it's had a huge influence, having science be part of it. And frankly, vocal science, having people studying singing and the elements of singing. So, but you know, I'm teaching now too, and I think I have so much history with it. And let me talk about longevity for just a minute. So what I'm now telling people, I'm doing a keynote for the National Choral Institute next week, or I can't remember the name of the organization, but to talk about the fact that it is just like with all aging, it's a fight against gravity, because the voice wants to get lower and heavier and raspy and darker, and it wants to do those things. And my voice has not done that. I would have loved to be able to sing heavier repertoire, but it hasn't done that. If anything, it's probably gotten a little bit more refined, but I've maintained my range, but I have to be very careful about what I sing. So the two things that I've seen change with aging are not being able to manage high tessitura over long periods of time, and not being able to sing over loud orchestras. And so the hours was a heavy lift for me. I won't do it again, but I did it twice, and I'm glad. I am going to sing Pat Nixon again in Paris next year. So, the tool that really changed it for me is straw phonation. I warm up. I can warm up in a taxi. I can warm up in the hallway on my way to rehearsal. It takes 2 minutes. I mean, my voice just goes, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And it is the slimming down and the counteracting this weight. The more you start carrying weight up in the voice, the harder singing becomes. It's just been, it's given me a whole Indian summer of singing. So,
which we all appreciate. Keep singing.
well, I do have an audience, and that's the key.
Do you want to say anything else about your own personal regimen that's worked so well? You warm up? Do you cool down? Do you space out?
I don't cool
engagements?
down. I don't cool down, and I know. I know Stephen King. I talk about him a lot because we're colleagues in Aspen, and now I'm at Wolf Trap as well. So. I'll learn about a slightly older group of singers who are more close to career. We have a little bit of a younger group in Aspen, but he's adamant about warming down. So I don't know. I haven't noticed a big difference when I do it, but I don't go to loud places. I hardly eat in restaurants. I'm really careful about that. Speaking over noise is the main thing that I avoid. My husband's gotten really good at talking for me, sometimes to the point where somebody said, let her talk. And he said, I'm just trying to help her, so I know what she's going to say, so I'll say it for her so she doesn't have to shout.
Have you ever had any formal training for speaking?
I had a session with Linda that helped me tremendously. There she is. Because I knew my speaking voice was bad, and just adding more pitch into the sound, and I saw she really helped me. I kind of know what to do, and I think about it like I'm doing right now. But when left to my own devices, I will get a little bit low and fryish. So can I mention something about my Investigator Awards, because some of you could apply to them. We did choose a singer. We just chose the new cohort. So it's on the NeuroArts Blueprint. You can just Google Renée Fleming Investigator Awards. It's a $25,000 pilot grant. And it should be somebody who has access to a lab, connected to a university, and who works with an artist. And what I've now started saying is, I want these to be young people. We're creating a pipeline for the future, and the NIH was following up with fellowships, which are a little bit in question now, but they're pretty independent. The FNIH, the foundation for the NIH, so they're hoping to continue to pursue this if they can raise the money, and those are much bigger grants. And so I encourage you. We just chose one singer who is doing, oh shoot, I don't have my phone. You can look it up, but she's doing something with Nordhoff, with that particular technique. And every year so far, we've only had 2 years, but and these are young people. They're so inspirational, and they want to change the world. They're 2 for Alzheimer's both years with caregivers. They're thinking about the social aspect to this as well. So I encourage you to look into it and apply.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes. How about we open it up for questions? And if nobody has questions, we'll keep talking.
Hi. There was a slide, it was like 4 from the end where there were a bunch of links, and I was just wondering if it's possible to go back.
Oh yeah, can we put that slide up again? One more. That's it.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
that's it. So there are a lot of books. It's frankly, I really think if universities can help, they could just offer an introduction to arts and health. I have a major PBS series that's in the planning stage right now, which I just pray that they can fund it. That will really move the needle, because dissemination, you know this, in so many areas of research is the hardest thing. And the NIH, my colleagues there said that. They said, like, I didn't know there was a whole institute devoted to in integrative health, which is slated to be cut. So the new bill has taken 23 institutes at the NIH and wants to reduce them to 7. That's how much the cut is. It's almost 40% of research funding that will completely alter biomedical research and all of the things that could be discovered for our generation. and further, and for a long time. So I just, and you also know how hard it is to get funding for research, and when you lose it or stopped mid-term, how do you start again? I mean, it takes forever. So this has been a tragedy that is difficult to comprehend. I mean, the Kennedy Center and the arts too have been hugely impacted. The NEA, I love the NEA. They have no money and they do so much good with it. All over the country, in all of the 50 states, they work, and it's just tragic.
For those who are not Americans, NEA is the National Endowment for the Arts.
Right, and the humanities is also slated to be cut.
And everything Renee said, as usual, is absolutely right. The other side of that is we have an opportunity. If we lose federal funding, we need to find a way to continue the research. And whether that's through individual philanthropists or new alliances with corporations or whatever, I am always concerned in any area when we're entirely reliant on one source to be able to do what we do. So I am hopeful that none of these things will come to pass, or very few of them will come to pass, but in the meanwhile we need to start evolving alternate pathways to assure that we can do what we have to do in the future.
Well, and we've always been small and scrappy, so we can revert to that again as well.
Absolutely.
It's not like these grants have ever been huge. And the fact that you're in healthcare, I think, is really helpful, because that, I mean, they are going to cut, you know, the Children's Hospital in Washington, 60% of their patients are on Medicaid. So those cuts will decimate people's health, you know, all through the lifespan. So yeah, I encourage you to figure out ways, absolutely, of continuing the research. It's so important.
Hi, Renee. I think that your voice is just so beautifully preserved, and please forgive me if this question is too personal, but I did see you recently in a concert, and the thought that came to me was, have you done any hormone replacement therapy? With perimenopause and menopause being such an important issue.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. In fact, the doctors that I have said stay on it for the rest of your life. Because, and I did it because of the benefits for your mucous membranes. Because I said, well, that's singing. You know, we need that. So, and I'm on a tiny dosage, but I plan on staying on it.
And there is no question that loss of estrogen changes the voice. It drops slowly over time, and it's avoidable. The one thing that should be added to the answer is, I try to remember on my patients sometimes to ask when during the menstrual cycle their voice is best. For some people, it doesn't make a bit of difference. For many people, the immediate premenstrual period is noticeably worse, about a third. But some people will tell you, and it's usually shortly into flow, 4 or 5 days. There's no research in singing, but there's good research in athletics. So we get hormone levels and bank them in the chart. So when you do hormone replacement, you don't use your favorite Premarin and Provera. You can actually tailor them to what's naturally correct for the singer. Nobody else does it except hopefully some of my former fellows. The other thing is
Precision medicine.
it is. So I'll ask you a question. How old are you when you go through menopause?
It can start as early, late 30s, early 40s, and perimenopause.
Yeah, people usually say the 50s, and then you read the tabloids about some 70-year-old in England who gave birth to quadruplets. But the fifth standard deviation in the other direction is 28. So you can go through normal menopause as young as 28. If you have somebody making a living singing Serbinetta and Queen of the Night who goes through menopause at 28 in the early 30s without hormone replacement, her longevity is questionable. So good question. We have time for more.
Hi, thank you for being here and sharing the work that you're doing. I work with a population that can't say no. It's the special operations, elite level warfighters, and we're doing voice-centric work. So another pathway, because I've been seeing what's going on with NIH and the funding, and the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, has a brain health initiative. And I was wondering if you're aware of the massive hundreds of millions of dollars that are involved with that brain health initiative.
No.
Because what's lacking in that is voice-centric. I went away, I went to Mahoney, voice and paper form, do some interesting work. Went away from the voice world, strength and conditioning, neuroscience, came back this year, thank you, Dr. Sadaloff and Voice Foundation for evolving so beautifully over the last 10 to 12 years. And my goal is to come back as a singing scientist, so thank you for that. But yeah, there's another pathway.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I will be sure and get that word out, and you should all be applying for those grants as well.
Right.
Public health, I know I have a young assistant now who's not here this time, but she got in Indiana more than a $20 million grant just right out of college, applying with 2 other young women for public health, and it was for arts for drug addiction. And so that's another area of huge concern, and so many states are trying to solve these problems, and there are lots of artistic ways of really moving the needle there. But thank you so much for that. I'm going to definitely get the word out.
Please, and then
There he
I
is.
just want to thank you for your emphasis that you put on communal and family singing. I know in your family you sang from early ages and never stopped, and the whole neighborhood heard it, as I recall you were saying one time. In my life, it's my mother and my aunt who sang with me constantly, and that gave me all the interest in the voice. So let's sing at home, and I don't care how well we're on.
Absolutely.
But let's just sing. Thank you.
Even before we're born.
Yes. There are so many studies all of a sudden now relating to singing and health, and choral singing comes out on top. So you add the whole social connection aspect to it, and especially for aging adults who are often isolated. And I would say also teens, any kind of group artistic activity, theater. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, which many of you have probably read, when I read that his son, he felt his life was saved by becoming involved in theater, I said to my editor, I said, could you ask him if he'd write a blurb for Music in Mind? He said, because he also published that book, and he said, no, he never does it. I said, just ask. He gave me the best blurb. But so definitely, any kind of group artistic activity is good for us. I mean, think about the evolution of it. I mean, this is how tribal people survived, and we know now, extremely tribal.
In passing, we need to mention another potential for abuse. I'm not selling books here, but Brenda Smith and I wrote a book on choral pedagogy. For the physicians, you would think that somebody who conducts a choir knows something about singing in the voice, but in many cases it's the person who can play the piano or the organ, who rehearses in an instrumental fashion, which is not necessarily voice-friendly. But we felt that we had to write a second one on choral pedagogy for the older singer. So the risk, and it's out, the risk here is we conduct choirs of 20-year-olds differently from the way we conduct choirs of 70 or 80-year-olds, and if we don't, we can injure those voices. So it needs to be encouraged, it needs to be done. Everybody should be singing in a choir, but we need to understand that it requires new knowledge and new expertise, and that you can't just assume that because you conduct a high school choir, you can conduct a geriatric choir. Last question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fleming, for everything that you have given us over the years, and you are continuing to give. It's so incredibly amazing, inspiring. This may not be something that you can answer, or Dr. Sadaloff even, but you mentioned very briefly that in classical singing, you took the time to figure out what was the right repertoire for yourself, or maybe what is referred to in classical singing as a fach. But we don't have that in commercial music. we just saw kids sing what they sing because the show is what it is, and they scream their brains out on the highest bell possible note. And the human body's the same if you sing contemporary commercial music. So I would like to know if you have any thoughts about approaching, let's call it non-classical, good generic term, in the same way that you would think about repertoire for classical singing for other styles of singing that are not classical in terms of a thought or a comfort zone in finding the right way to sing those different kinds of styles.
Well, I would suggest you talk to my sister, because what I know from her is that a lot of casting is done by type, and she won't let her students sing inappropriate repertoire. You know, they come in and they want to sing Some Enchanted Evening, and they're 18 years old, so she just won't allow it. But you can ask her if she has. There may be publications that are useful for Rochelle. Is there a publication that you would recommend? For appropriate repertoire for music theater?
Actually, we need so many more. It depends on what it is. If it's pop rock, I recommend Broadway Audition. Sherry Sanders. So, and she has Spotify lists, even just to jog your mind. I find that challenging, and it's geared toward music theater performers. And then for music theater rep, we don't rely on the singers' musical theater anthologies anymore, because there's a lot of repertoire in those books that are inappropriate for undergrad and younger singers. So I don't use them anymore.
Wow. So it sounds like you need some new anthologies.
Somebody please put one together.
Yeah.
There are a couple wonderful indexes of songs by the decade, and I would check out musicaltheatersongs.com.
Thank you, Rochelle. And that takes us, gives us an opportunity to end on an issue that I think is very important.
Can we just let her ask, since she's been waiting patiently? There's
okay.
only one more person.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If Renee wants an encore, we're doing an encore.
It has been an absolute honor to be able to absorb your information and perspective on the arts with your outstanding career. I just wanted to circle back to a question that you asked but didn't have the time to answer yesterday at the masterclass, which was any advice for young singers considering the mention of the conservatories and how it's kind of a system that's a little bit gotten away from us. Can you speak on that at all?
Well, I mean, you want to kind of work hard on your technique. You have to get that foundation, and then have repertoire, audition repertoire that's really fine-tuned to you, that works, that's the best you can do. I used to sing things that were way too hard when I auditioned, trying to impress people. You know, I had the wrong idea altogether about it. And but I eventually, figured it out. So, and then you've really got to make a lot of progress by the time you're in your late 20s. You've got to have done these, young artist programs in the summer, and then, once you graduate, try to get into a year-round one. You can get your master's degree, but then you better really hit the ground running after that. It is just so competitive, and there's little work in the U.S., and they're performing the same 10 titles in every opera company. Unlike when I started, it was still a much richer environment, and before then it was way more. There was more than that. A lot of singers are going to Europe, but I worry that now with the political climate and the way the U.S. is treating Europe, that might not continue to go well. And there are too many people flooding that market as well to try and get jobs. So all this to say, double major. And these are really fascinating careers. I mean, I tell everybody, education was always an option, but now I would really think about healthcare.
Well, as an ending thought, the teachers in this room represent a vision change. We talked a little bit about commercial music, and Renee made some comments, all of which are correct. We've complained for decades about the quality of pop music singers, and people learn how to sing by emulating singers on the radio. The fundamental problem was most good singing teachers refused to teach those students at all. It's changed, but we need to keep it changing. The teachers in this room have learned how to teach different styles, have learned how to apply healthy techniques to everything from Broadway to rock, and in some cases even rap, and certainly the broad area of commercial music. But you know, if you have a rock singer who comes in and can't find a singing teacher because they don't want to be associated with a rock singer, we can't complain about the damage they do. We've made a lot of progress over the last 30 years.
Definitely.
You know, I mean, when we first, I love Beverly, and I told Johnson, and I still have a key to her office, which Renee will tell you is a big deal, but I'm not sure that she would have taken a hard rock singer.
She had Kevin Kline, she had a couple of other actors. She was really open-minded to that. She was pretty good about that. But the two star teachers, Bill Riley and Joan Lader, are right here. So if you want to know anything, and they both kept up with trends. And music theater has changed dramatically in terms of what the requirements are for singers. And it's, when I was in Carousel on Broadway, I just thought, oh my gosh, how are they doing this every night? Joshua Henry as Billy Bigelow, just killing it 8 times a week, you know. I had to sing basically one song. So I got to kind of live in the city within a city and enjoy that experience. But there's no way I could sing those big roles like that. So it's a whole different way of teaching. And for rock too, I mean, they're so athletic as well, you know, a lot of them.
Well, it's an important cultural change that we need to encourage. And there are more rock singers than most people know who are successful because they have done it. I can talk about John Bon Jovi because I'm in his documentary. John took singing lessons 4 days a week for years. He now studies with Phil Doucette, and that's one of the reasons he's on his way back. But rock singers don't tell you that. But the ones who are still singers and not waiters, more of them than you think, actually found somebody to help them. Now we've got to have enough teachers that you can help the kids who are in high school working with a band on the weekend. Renee, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you.
That's why you need another clock.
You are so wonderful. That was a good conversation. I learned so much from you.